I see we've also started streaming on Facebook Live. So for anyone just joining us now, we will be starting in just a couple minutes. Okay, I think that we are ready to go. So hello, everyone. My name is Eli Wolf, and I am the senior reporter for San Jose Spotlight, the city's only nonprofit news organization dedicated to local, independent political and business reporting in the South Bay. I want to welcome everyone to our 2022 Mayoral Candidate Forum. First off, we'd like to thank our sponsor, the San Jose Silicon Valley NAACP, for making tonight's forum possible. We are a community-supported nonprofit newsroom, and if you'd like to see more programming like this, please consider making a tax-deductible gift today at sanjosespotlight.com. I will now go over the rules for tonight's forum. Each candidate will get 1 minute for an introduction and 1 minute for closing remarks. For each question, we'll rotate the order for candidate responses. Each candidate will receive 1 minute per question and 30 seconds for rebuttal if requested by the candidates. And in order to keep things moving, we'll allow a maximum of 3 total rebuttals in response to each question. And now I'd like to welcome all of our candidates. We have Santa Clara County Supervisor Cindy Chavez, San Jose Councilmember Raul Perales, who represents District 3, San Jose Councilmember Dev Davis, who represents District 6, San Jose Councilmember Matt Mahan, who represents District 10, and retired San Jose Police Officer Jim Spence. Welcome all. So we will move on to opening statements, and we will start with Supervisor Chavez. So whenever you're ready, Supervisor.
Thank you. And good evening, everyone. And thank you so much, all of you, for taking time away from your families to join us this evening. I'm very excited about tonight. I'm looking forward to the questions. And I wanted to just say that I'm running for mayor because I believe that genuine leadership can save lives and improve health, build affordable housing, and keep people and keep families safe, and still do what we can to lead on social justice. And I also believe that we all have a shared vision of San Jose. We want to address homelessness and have clean creeks and have great public safety and great relationships with our officers, and really want to make this city a place that we're all proud of, and that people don't only want to stay, live here and play here, but that they can afford to stay here. Thank you.
Thank you. And now next, Councilmember Perales.
Yeah, thank you, Eli, as well. And thank you to all the participants. I have to give a special thank you to my parents who are tuning in today. So be nice to me, everybody. But really happy to have my parents tuning in. I am proud to be a lifelong resident here in San Jose, the son of an immigrant. My father immigrated from Mexico, and a part of a family that was working class, living here, growing up in a rent-controlled apartment over in West San Jose, and having the opportunity to be the first in my family to be able to graduate from college here at San Jose State University. And I have my parents to thank for all that. So I'm happy to have them with us tonight. I have served my entire career dedicated to our community, serving our community. as a teacher, a police officer, and now an elected official. And I'm excited about the opportunity to help lead our city and make it a city for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. Big problems only get bigger during difficult times. I've certainly learned that as a council member over the last 5 years and definitely during the pandemic. But what I've also learned is that good things can happen when we work together. San Jose is facing big problems, homelessness and blight, just to name two. And City Hall must begin to help, not hinder, our growth. We must work together because it is time to restore San Jose's status. We must be a safe, clean, and thriving San Jose. To restore San Jose, as mayor, I will focus on rebuilding our public safety, protecting our single-family homes, and tackling our growing homelessness problem. I will not waste time on ineffective and costly new policies like gun owner mandates and non-citizen voting in local elections. I look forward to our conversation tonight, and I want to thank San Jose Spotlight for bringing us together.
Thank you. Councilmember Mahan.
Thanks, Eli, and thank you to San Jose Spotlight and everyone who's tuning in this evening. My name is Matt Mahan. I'm the council member for District 10, where my wife Sylvia and I are raising our two little kids, Nina and Luke. I first came to San Jose as a work-study scholarship student, commuting over the hill from Watsonville, and came back as a public school teacher in East San Jose. Spent the last decade in the tech sector building tools to promote civic engagement. And now I'm running for mayor because our city is heading in the wrong direction on so many issues, from homelessness to trash and crime. And I know that we can do better. But in order to do better, we have to be radically more focused and accountable for results. I believe that unless we can meet ambitious goals that we set on these key issues, elected officials and senior city staff shouldn't get raises. You're going to hear a lot of the same ideas tonight on the big issues facing our city, but I hope you'll ask yourself who has the experience and mindset necessary to create accountability and results at City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Spence.
Hello, I'm James Spence, candidate for mayor. I'm a third-generation San Jose resident. I was educated in our local public schools and have a Bachelor of Arts degree from San Jose State. I worked for the residents of this city for over 31 years as a police officer and sergeant, working on the Mayor's Gang Task Force, the School Liaison Unit, Community Services Division, and supervising the Crime Prevention through Environmental Design Unit, which provided technical support and community knowledge on the Midtown and Santana Row projects. I was a staff member for San Jose City Councilman John DeQuisto, reviewing for him policy issues coming before the council. I operate a small private investigations company. Learning firsthand about operating a business has taught me about the hurdles business face every day. Because of my diverse background, I'm not new to how city services or San Jose government operates. As mayor, I would take very seriously the fiduciary responsibility for using our taxpayer dollars to provide the core services for strong infrastructure, fire protection, library and park services, and police enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we will move into our first question of the evening, which is, what do you believe should be the top priorities for San Jose at this time? And Councilmember Davis, let's start with you.
Well, the chief responsibility of any city is public safety. So police and fire. Rebuilding our police department would be my top priority as mayor. And following closely on those heels is, of course, addressing our homelessness problem and our trash problem, which are related, and ensuring that we get the response to our mental health call, to our 911 calls with mental health and police officers so that we can respond appropriately and ensure that people get the help that they need. But first and foremost, rebuilding our police department takes about another 250 officers, which we'll have to do over the course of 5 to 10 years. And what you may have heard recently, my priority there is rebuilding our traffic enforcement unit. We used to have 50 officers in that unit. We currently have 14 officers in that unit.
Thank you. Councilmember Perales.
Yeah, thank you. There'll be a bit of an echo on the priorities. Number one, I would say it's addressing our homelessness and affordable housing crisis. We have a tremendous challenge ahead of us in addressing that crisis, and it'll be tremendously important that we work collaboratively and take it head on. Secondly, will be public safety. We do absolutely need to be able to rebuild our police department here, our rank and file. I know firsthand from working as a police officer in our city for 8 years and then currently still serving as a reserve officer, the challenges that we face there in being woefully understaffed. At the same time, we need to ensure that we are addressing the inequities and the systemic racism within policing as we are working to also rebuild and make a better police department here in the city of San Jose.
Thank you. Mr. Spence.
I think one of the biggest priorities for us, of course, is the police and the fire. Sometimes we don't talk enough about the fire department. They're grossly understaffed and they need better equipment considering how much high-rise building we're doing. The other thing that we need to do is we need to open up our city. Get rid of these mask mandates, get rid of the shot mandates, get rid of things that inhibit small businesses, not even small business, but community businesses to open and thrive, to get people to be able to get back to work so they can support themselves and their family, so that the young people can go to school without having to worry about having to mask up and having all the rest of the problems that are associated with that situation. It was intolerable, the fact that 2 years worth of senior students never got a graduation, a junior prom or a senior ball. Because if you ask anybody out there, I'm sure they all remember, it was good or a bad type situation. They remember those things. And those people, young people, never got that chance. So I think those are some of the things we need to do.
Thank you. Supervisor Chavez.
Thank you for the question. I think that probably most important is addressing homelessness. And along with that, I think taking a much deeper dive in our collaboration with agencies, not just the city, but the city and the county working together, because we have to continue to expand drug and alcohol services and mental health services as well. Public safety, certainly. I think Jim, your point is well taken, that we not only need to be looking at the expansion of the police department and frankly, creative ways to continue to address public safety, but also really taking a look at our firefighting, not only because of the core role they play, in an urban core, but we have brown hills all around us. And I think with an extended drought, we're going to really need to think about those kinds of, how we're going to approach that. Then I don't want to forget affordable housing and also just cleaning San Jose up, making it shiny again.
Thank you. And Councilmember Mahan.
Thanks. Look, I think we're all going to talk about addressing homelessness more cost effectively, rebuilding our police department, cleaning up the city, making housing more affordable. You'd have to be living under a rock to not have those be in the top four. I think the reason I'm so focused on setting measurable goals, programming our budget around those goals, and then tying our future pay raises to whether or not we have an impact there, is that what's been lacking is focus and accountability. If you watch our council meetings or you watch other local government meetings, we're all over the place talking about, we're trying to be way too many things to too many people. And I think we need to set strategic goals that are measurable and ambitious but achievable, have a dashboard on our website that shows our progress month over month, and have skin in the game as elected officials. We're making the big decisions around the budget and which strategies we prioritize, and we shouldn't get raises if we can't move the needle on these issues.
Thank you. Moving on, this question might have a little overlap with the last one, but which city departments would you increase funding for and why? And let's start with Councilmember Perales.
Well, this is actually, it's a challenging issue because it would be every single department. We are woefully understaffed within the city of San Jose, but I do think we need to prioritize that because that's just not going to be realistic. And so when you look at these priorities that we just spoke about, number one, certainly public safety. Our police department, as we know, is understaffed, 250 just to get us back, 250 officers just to get us back to where we were 12 years ago. Our fire department, as we've talked about, absolutely, we need to be able to dedicate more resources to them as well. If we're going to address this issue of homelessness and affordable housing, it's not just those that are working within our housing department, as a priority, or those that are working on blight and beautification, but it's the planning process. It's our planning professionals in permitting that is stalling projects from being able to be implemented fast enough. So unfortunately, we have too many needs, but I think those would be the highest priorities.
Thank you. Councilmember Mahan.
Thank you. I'd say public safety is priority number one. Rebuilding our department, as we've all mentioned, has to be the top priority. And we need to build the budget around headcount targets and staffing for police and fire. I would also argue that we need to expand adoption of technology and staffing within planning, building, and code enforcement, both to address quality of life issues in our neighborhoods, but also because planning and building is actually the revenue generator for the city. We need to facilitate that investment in jobs and housing where we want it, and actually move forward investment in the city so that we build our tax base in order to have the funding for services that we desperately need without increasing tax rates. And so that department needs to be staffed up, reformed, and actually attracting investment. And then on homelessness, I'd just say, I think we have a lot of resources. I think we need to be spending them more effectively. And I'm sure we'll talk about that in future questions. Thank you.
Thanks. Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. As others have stated, I think there's a lot of agreement on where our priorities should lie in funding. I have already talked a lot about the police department, and even within the police department, we need to ensure that we have enough traffic enforcement officers. We need to ensure that we have foot patrol in our business districts. We need to ensure that our investigations units are fully staffed in addition to patrol. I agree with the other statements about our fire department. We have a very thinly staffed police department. We also have a very thinly staffed fire department. We do not have as many fire stations per square mile as we should. And it's very costly to build new fire stations, but we absolutely need more of them. The planning department needs to be bolstered because it is the beginning of our economic development. And we shouldn't forget about parks, because that is where the quality of life is for so many residents as well.
Thank you. Supervisor Chavez.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think that, obviously I'm going to agree with my colleagues on expanding our police department and expanding our fire department. And I don't just mean with badge staff. I think we should be looking at who can help us solve what problem. I think the other thing that I would just want to hit on is, planning really is, planning, building, and code enforcement are kind of the golden goose. And so making sure that that is well funded and really operating optimally is going to be important to the future vitality of the city of San Jose. The other thing I would like to explore is how we do a better job of planning with our other city and county and special district departments. So we're not overspending in areas, but we're able to collaborate a little bit more, with a little more strategically, without infringing on everybody's right to make a decision. But sometimes we overspend in areas I don't think we need to, because we're not collaborating.
Thank you. And Mr. Spence.
I do believe that the planning area of our city is lacking. We need to have the inspectors, we need to have planning people down at City Hall with City Hall open, so that developers, residents who want to improve their properties can get through the process in a more timely fashion. That's one of the things we hear all the time. When I was working for the councilman, was most of the complaints were coming from the fact that the planning department or a compliance officer, the citizens just weren't getting their bang for the buck, what they needed to do. So I think that's really important. Of course, police and fire, we always want to keep them up to date, but we also can't forget the idea that we have some beautiful park areas, but they're looking rather shabby right now, run down. We need to go ahead and reinvest our money into those, because if we're going to do all this big building that seems to be on the council's agenda, we have to have some place for these people where they can relax, where they can go and with their families and enjoy what's around us. I don't want to see a city that is totally full of cement, concrete, and blacktop.
Thank you. Our next question is, San Jose's pension costs continue to take a major bite out of the budget and now exceed $3.5 billion in unfunded pension liabilities. what would you do as mayor to address this? And Supervisor Chavez, let's start with you.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I want to just acknowledge that our pension costs are not, they're money that the city is investing, but also the employees are investing in their own pensions. And so one of the reasons that we need to be very thoughtful about how much and how fast we expand any department is we have to be able to pay for pensions in the long run. And I do just want to acknowledge that our employees are paying their fair share in terms of pensions. But the second thing I would just add is that I do think that the city's done a very good job in partnership with public safety in managing those pension costs. And that was done, unfortunately, the first time it was done to the employees. The second time it was done with the employees. And I think one of the reasons that we have a challenge in attracting the best and the brightest to come and work in our police and fire departments is because people don't think this is a friendly place for them to work. I think we need to re-welcome people back and help them feel like this is going to be a great place for them to start their careers and stay with us.
Thank you. Mr. Spence.
Pension costs, it's very difficult to tie a lot of stuff to pension costs because the workers do have a chance, like Council Supervisor Chavez is saying, they are paying their fair share of what goes into the pension. The fund needs to, and it has taken a reset, shall we say, on values that they're expected from their investments. So that's a good thing that's going on with the retirement boards, both the sworn and non-sworn. The pension costs, I think they're inflated because we use the idea of unfunded liability. And that one of the things that's a fallacy about that is that not everyone is going to take a pension right off the bat, that the contributions keep coming in. So when people say it's unfunded, that idea is the fact that if everybody went on pension today, that supposedly there wouldn't be enough money. So I think what's one of the things we have to look at is we have to be careful how we frame what is going on with the pension costs.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. I will state first that I am absolutely not in favor of pension obligation bonds. You didn't ask specifically about those, but the council took action to look at pension obligation bonds as a way to pay off unfunded liabilities, which is basically just kind of a switch of paying off unfunded liabilities for a much harder liability that has to be paid off in a defined amount of time. I am not in favor of that. We have had some positive results from both the pensions in the last year, which is great and has decreased the amount that it is costing us every year. But we have to continue to work with our bargaining units. We've been able to do in the last few years to give part of the raise pensionable for when we're working with the bargaining units, and part of the raise be non-pensionable. I think it's important for us to continue those discussions and just be realistic about what we can and can't do. We absolutely have to keep our promises, but we can't be making new promises.
Thank you. And Councilmember Perales.
Yeah, thank you. As Councilmember Davis just said, actually, the council has put a lot of time and thought into this exact issue, and we can't agree on what the next best steps are to take, quite frankly, because what we're dealing with here is financial planning, and a lot of it that has to deal with the market and what is happening with the pensions investments. And that's what got us into this place in the first place back in the Great Recession. And ultimately what we're still struggling with today. It absolutely is going to require a lot of diligence in how we are managing those investments, the relationship between the pension boards and the council, which has strengthened over the years, but we need to make sure that that continues to be stronger, that there's a lot of diligence over those decisions. I would be open to opportunities like pension obligation bonds. I don't think the timing is now, but I do think we need to be prepared, as we are working towards now to be prepared to include that as an option.
Thank you. Councilmember Mahan.
Thank you. So currently 15 cents of every dollar we spend through our general fund goes to paying the unfunded liability that we face each year. And that is projected out to be a significant burden. The good news is that past reforms, such as Measure T, have put us on a very long and slow glide path to eventually unwinding that debt by the early 2040s, which is a long ways away, about 2 decades. It's a long time. So we have to work with our bargaining units to reduce that burden while still attracting new employees. It's critical that we are a strong employer who can attract talent. I wrote the first memo, though, opposing pension obligation bonds because I don't think the answer is to gamble on Wall Street and hope that we can outperform our discount rate. I think the only really sustainable answer at this point is not to put it on the backs of taxpayers or workers, but to invest in economic growth, grow the local economic pie, and build our tax base.
Thank you. Switching gears here, there is a humanitarian crisis that is unfolding in our backyard. A decade after San Jose cleared the jungle, the largest homeless encampment in the country, more than 150 people are now living in squalid conditions in Columbus Park near downtown San Jose, where disease and rodents are festering. The city has until June 30th to clear the camp per FAA orders. This has been a major challenge for the city and emblematic of San Jose's growing homelessness crisis. What do you think is an effective solution for addressing homelessness in San Jose? And we will start with Mr. Spence.
I think one of the first things we need to do is we need to stop giving all the freebies away. We need to cut back on all the shelter, all the sanitation, all the free food, and have these people realize that it's time to get back to work. It's time to go get a job. It's time for them to be productive residents of this city. When I was a young police officer, we used to go down to the railroad tracks where the hobo camps were, and we dealt with those. So this homeless situation has been around for a long, long time. So I think what we need to do is we need to go ahead and cut off all the freebies, let the people know that it's time for them to get back to work and to become productive citizens of our valley.
Okay, Councilmember Perales.
Yeah, I would say I don't think Jim could be any more wrong about the solution to this problem. It is a tremendously challenging issue, and if any of us could answer it, quite frankly, in a minute, I think right, we would be lying to you. There are so many challenges that we face with individuals that are unhoused. And for me specifically, I'll try to narrow it down to a couple things I think we need to do. Number one, specifically to this issue as well, of where we're seeing under the airport runway there, we need to have an opportunity or an option of sanctioned encampments. We continue to abate encampments like this only to see those encampments re-encamped after abatement, or simply people moving just a few blocks away. So we need to add that tool to the toolbox. Secondly, we need to be able to work more collaboratively together with all the different agencies, entities that are addressing this issue, because it involves much more than just somebody needing a home. Mental health, drug and alcohol addiction. I would encourage that we start a homelessness task force within the first 30 days as mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Mahan.
Thanks for the question. You know, what we're doing currently, while extremely well intended and helping some people, simply isn't scaling to the scope of the problem, and it's not working quickly enough. We are halfway through our second 5-year plan to end homelessness, and we have more people living on the streets today than ever before. I've been an advocate for pragmatic solutions, including cost-effective shelter, building prefabricated modular units on government-owned land across the county to scale up safe, secure, individual shelter that still gives people dignified private space, investing in court services that actually empower people to get back on their own 2 feet. We're not doing enough around addiction treatment, around mental health treatment, inpatient, longer-term stays, and job training, job placement. The list goes on, but the money should be going into the services that empower people to put their lives back together. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Chavez.
Thank you. This is such a complex topic, and I know at some point during the election, we're going to get a chance just hopefully to do a discussion or a debate or a forum just on this topic. I think there are 4 things that we can do, right? Some that we're doing right now and some that we need to expand. 1, we need to keep building permanent supportive housing for extremely low income and very low income people. We don't have enough housing at that price point. So Jim, even if people were working full time, they couldn't necessarily afford the rent. And that's what we need. That's one thing. Second, we need to continue to build interim housing, which we're building now. We need to do more of that. And third, we need to be in the prevention business. I mean, one of the things that we learned during COVID is that by giving people a chunk of money, sometimes $5,000, kept them from becoming homeless. And so being very disciplined about looking at what's working, keep doing that, do it more, do it faster, and stop doing what's not working.
Thank you. And Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. What's not working is that we don't have any tough love backing up our compassion. I'm a mother of 2 teens, and I find that tough love is a form of compassion. We absolutely need more housing solutions, and we need more housing or homelessness prevention programs, interim and permanent supportive housing. We need safety, sanitation, and services for all of the types of housing that we do provide. We need to collaborate with our big property owners, the county, Caltrans, and Valley Water, to name a few. But we have to add that tough love component in. I'm not advocating what Mr. Spence is advocating for at all, but I am saying that we need to make it not okay to be camping if we out on the streets or near the creeks. If we offer you services, you need to take them or vacate. We have to do all of this with community input as well.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question. San Jose is behind on its goal to build affordable housing. So how would you incentivize developers to build more low-income and very low-income housing, which often doesn't pencil out for them? And let's start with Councilmember Mahan.
Yeah, thanks for the question. We actually just reviewed our housing element last night at our council meeting. And the truth is that the way that we're funding affordable housing is largely a tax on market rate housing. And so if we want to increase affordable housing or just housing supply overall, which I'd argue is the most important thing we can do to prevent displacement and address our housing crisis, we are going to have to streamline our approval processes, specifically where we want housing, places like downtown and near transit. We're going to have to look at reducing our fees. We're going to have to incentivize it. And as long as affordable housing is largely being funded one way or another through the market rate housing that we're building, we need to stop demonizing building market rate housing for our growing population. So I think we really need to get comfortable with the idea that we're going to scale up through smaller and taller buildings in places like downtown and near transit across the city, and then do as much as we can to then get that money into those affordable units. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Spence.
I think one of the things we need to look at is the fact that the city needs to get out of the business of building homes, building anything that works on this housing, because every time the city gets involved, they do a very poor job about it. There are a number of nonprofits that are trying to do this, and I support their idea to do that, but I don't support the use of taxpayer money to build housing. When we give away incentives to developers, sometimes we give away a lot taxpayer dollars that need to be used in other places. So I really think that the city needs to get out of the home building business, go ahead and let the market take its course, let the developers develop the way they can, and know that that's part of what we expect for them to do. Make sure we have good contracts that make sure that the affordable housing stays affordable for a long time.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. First, I want to talk about affordable housing is subsidized housing. And what it is really a statement of our value. It's saying that all people of all income levels are welcome and needed and a useful part of our society. So we do have a role to play in subsidizing housing for people who can't afford to live here, who are doing essential jobs in our city. I think that's really important to note. We absolutely need to streamline our planning process. We also need to align our planning process with affordable housing deadlines. They have to go through multiple streams of funding and they have different deadlines. Our process for planning is often not aligned with that. That's one of the reasons why I helped get an additional general plan amendment process just for affordable housing, so that people wouldn't miss the deadline, so that more affordable housing could be built more quickly.
Thank you. Councilmember Perales.
Yeah, thank you. I absolutely agree. We need to be incentivizing affordable housing, and we can do so in a number of ways. Number one, through funding. We have to be able to generate the revenues, though, to get that funding. We passed Measure E, thanks to the voters, and there's a terrific opportunity. Supervisor Chavez helped pass Measure A. We can continue to compile dollars to help incentivize the development of affordable housing. We can also do so with land, though, with property, whether it's reducing the value or gifting over property to be able to create more affordable housing on those properties. And the other way is through time. We can cut back the time, which then equates to a saving in money for those that are developing affordable housing. And it is extremely important that we do so. The other component, though, is we need to be able to get community support. And we need the elected officials with the political will to be able to stand up for and support these affordable housing developments, because too many times we see these developments get shot down before they even make it in front of a vote, or lack support from council members or elected officials when they do go up for a vote.
Thank you. And Supervisor Chavez.
Yeah, thank you. This is a very important discussion, and I do just want to acknowledge that together as a community, and Raul, you were very helpful with passing Measure A. That has allowed us to have 4,400 units of housing that is built or in the pipeline, and for extremely low and very low income folks. Councilmember Davis has been enormously helpful with the project that we're going to look at in her district for foster youth. And the fact of the matter is that, I think that we have an opportunity by working more closely with planning, building, and code enforcement, and potentially even doing a bridge to have more contract workers helping us in there to get the pipeline moving, because we actually have resources right now. We have projects that are coming out of the ground. Measure A is way ahead of schedule because of so much of the work being done by all of you. And one last thing, I do think we need to look at whether or not, with the appropriate staffing, we can have more general plan amendments a year. We used to have 4 of them to make sure we could build more housing.
Thank you. We have a question from.
Eli, do I do a follow-up, please?
Yeah, if you want to do a rebuttal.
Not really a rebuttal. I'd just like to say that I think everyone believes in a handout, or excuse me, it believes in a hand up, not a handout. And I think that's what the taxpayers are looking at. If there's a way to help someone, that's fine, but no taxpayer wants to see their dollars going out to someone for free for housing. And I think those are the constraints that we have that we need to really talk about more than anything else.
Okay. We have a question from our audience. This is from Jenny. Is climate change on anyone's priority list? We have a relatively short time in which to reduce our carbon emissions to net zero, and if we don't succeed, we'll be facing problems that make all of our other current problems look small. So is climate change on anyone's priority list? And I suppose if so, how would you address it? And let's start with Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. Yes, it is on the priority list. That's why I supported San Jose Clean Energy, the creation of it, and why I have always been, as the chair of Transportation and Environment Committee, very interested in our San Jose Climate Smart Plan. But we need to do it smartly. We need to reduce our emissions in a smart way, and we need to really take into account the very real costs to our residents of making those changes. So the big issue right now is existing building electrification. And I do not support a firm deadline by which to make those changes to convert all of our gas appliances to electric. Again, we need to first work, I think, to strengthen our grid and to make sure that it is safe and able to handle the loads of additional electric cars that we will need to convert, and the additional electric appliances that we'll be converting. I know in my house, that would be the furnace, the dryer, and the stove. So that's a lot of energy in a lot of homes that will be needed.
Thank you. Supervisor Chavez.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I chaired the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, and have served on it for a number of years. And some of the actions that we've taken there have been to focus on some of the strictest rules that we could possibly have for refineries so that we can really try to deal with, with greenhouse gases, and also really to invest in expanding in transit. We think about BART and Caltrain, the number of cars those take off the road. And as we get people back to public transit, that's going to be very, very important. And one of the other things that we found during COVID is that we had a lot of people who were now working from home. At the county, we've reduced the number of trips, I think we have 27% of our staff that aren't commuting 2 days a week. And so I think there are lots of things that we can do, both thinking of ourselves as a city, an employer, a thought leader, in terms of really addressing climate change. I'm very excited about it, actually.
Thank you. And Councilmember Mahan.
Thank you. Well over half of our local GHG emissions come from car-based transportation. And so the most important thing we can do as a city is ensure that our land use policies reflect that fact, which is why I opposed and worked with environmental advocates to oppose the fourplex plan, because I think the future of housing in San Jose needs to be smart growth downtown and near transit. We also need to be investing in those transit systems, but that's a long lead time. And in the meantime, we have to make it easier for people to electrify, use an electric vehicle, electrify their homes. But we have to do it in a way that incentivizes and makes it easy for people, not just simply mandate irrespective of the cost or inconvenience and let people deal with it. We've got to be smart about how we do this in a way that brings people along with a climate smart plan, doesn't force change on them in an unproductive way.
Thank you. Mr. Spence.
I think that the 2030 goal that has been set, as well as other very close guidelines about changing over to make things greener, are really they're unrealistic. We have natural gas that's available in the United States. It's clean, it can be used, and to try and retrofit buildings and to stop the use of that, I think is very foolish. The idea of everyone going to electricity, our electric grid is nowhere near the capacity that it needs to be to accept all of these radical changes that people think should just happen overnight. Of all the electrification that comes on, only 10% of the vehicles in the United States are electric. We're still very much a gasoline-based economy, and we just need to face that. So I think that a number of the things that are proposed are not really sustainable, and they're not able to get to it right now.
Okay. Councilmember Perales.
Thank you. Climate change is absolutely a priority. It has been a priority for me, and one that we've been working towards. And I would say that what it truly needs is going to be bold leadership, because we're talking about some of the impacts of making what are absolutely dramatic changes. But what is going to be more impactful will be the dramatic impacts and changes to our environment if we don't begin to shift and if we don't take bold steps. And I'm proud that we have advanced our goals to 2030. I'm proud to have helped support the natural gas ban and to have been one of the few council members that was unwavering in that, and as we allowed an exemption at the last minute. And I think that that's the kind of leadership that it's going to take is if we are going to shift the direction here, be it in emissions from vehicles or the use of natural gases, we're going to need to be bold in those actions.
Thank you. So moving on to a related topic, we've reported on the Valley Transportation Authority's decrease in light rail ridership and budget woes. San Jose is trying to get people out of their cars, yet the light rail system is disconnected and slow. What would you do as mayor to improve public transit in our city? Councilmember Perales, let's start with you.
Yeah, thank you. I've had the opportunity of being a VTA board member now. This is going on my 8th year, so I intimately aware of the challenges that VTA is facing. Fortunately, the city of San Jose at the moment does have 5 seats on that board, and so we do have an opportunity to sway a lot of those actions in investments. We need to continue to invest in public transportation. We can't walk away simply because, say, the last 2 years through the pandemic, we've seen this steep decline in ridership. We know a lot of these challenges are not new. The speeds, how can we take better advantage of what we have, which is the public right of way, getting people that need to get on public transit an opportunity to get there more easily, more cheaply, more affordably. I am an advocate of making public transit free for those that cannot afford it, rather than simply just subsidizing it and making it more affordable, making it free for those individuals like students and low-income families. We need to continue to take actions that get people onto our public transit, and also building. Where we build, we need to ensure we're building near transit hubs, so then that way we can create those opportunities naturally.
Thank you. Mr. Spence.
Sorry. Our transit system is a mess. Ever since the VTA was formed in 1995, the city of San Jose has suffered for that decision. Yes, we have seats on the VTA board, but we can't, as one of the biggest entities within the valley, we can't make any changes without finding some other partners that go along with us. The VTA, the buses, they're dirty. They don't go where people want them to go. Look at what happened when the VTA decided to close down for 4 months. All those people that bought into the light rail, live in the high rises next to a transit spot, they were stranded. They had no way to get around. And did VTA increase the buses? No, they didn't. They put in restriction that they had to have masks, and people were standing on the corner while the bus passed them by because they couldn't get on it. This San Jose is not a Chicago, a Detroit, or a San Francisco. We are spread out. Our transit system does a limited job of getting people around because it doesn't go where they want to go.
Thank you. Councilmember Mahan.
Thanks. As someone who's relied on transit for much of my life, it's an issue I care a lot about. And I'd say if you look at the data, we have one of the best performing transit systems in the country right here in our backyard, which is Caltrain, with 70+% fare box recovery pre-COVID, because it's high frequency and gets people where they want to go. And we have one of the lowest performing in VTA light rail. We're subsidizing each light rail trip to the tune of something like $20 per passenger trip. We could just about put people in an Uber. And so, I'm a big believer in buses. I think we have to let the data guide us. We should be data driven in our decision. And buses have higher ridership, lower cost of operation. They're more flexible. We can do dedicated bus routes. We can have more diverse pickup and drop off spots, get people where they want to go at faster speeds, more cost effectively. I would double down on bus service and maybe test higher frequency on a few light rail lines. But that system is not proving to be particularly viable, which is a concern. It should be a concern for all of us, frankly.
Thank you. And Supervisor Chavez. Oh, I think you're on mute.
My office is super noisy. I apologize. And thank you. So just a couple of observations. One is both BART and Caltrain and VTA take people off the road. And VTA prior to COVID was moving 108,000 trips a day in our county. And they closed down for a short time because of the shooting. They didn't just decide to close down, Jim. I just wanted to highlight that. But what we learned from that, I think, is very valuable, which is that we have a lot of people who are relying on transit, and that we have people in our community who have opted not to buy cars because they want to be able to move around on transit. So we have an obligation to make these systems work. And we have an opportunity, and that is to make sure that BART comes all the way into the Dierdon Arena station, which will be the most connected station with high-speed rail, BART, light rail, buses. Oh, hopefully we'll get another question about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. I'm a big fan of public transit. I was a Caltrain rider when I worked, and then attended Stanford for my graduate degree for over a decade, and very proudly sit on the Caltrain board for the last 5 years as a council member, as the San Jose representative. So I absolutely agree that Caltrain is a great service. We are trying to shift our model now with so many people working from home, and trying to figure out where that fits in. But what the city can do specifically is lead on the Dierdon station expansion and integration of all the wonderful services that Cindy mentioned. that are happening at Diridon Station already and the expansion of those services over time. The other thing we need to do is ensure that we finish our urban village plans, especially the ones that are on high capacity transit corridors. That is absolutely probably the number one thing that we can do as a city to encourage public transit ridership.
Thank you. Moving on, for decades, San Jose leaders have been talking about revitalizing downtown. It seems like things have only gotten worse with vacant storefronts, blight, and homelessness. So how do we repair and revitalize downtown? And Councilmember Mahan, why don't we start with you?
Sure, it's one of the most important questions for our city. That should be the engine of cultural vitality and economic activity. And one of the key pieces we were just talking about, which is ensuring that these big transit investments we're making in BART and electrifying Caltrain are done on schedule, on time, and allow us to move tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people in and out of our urban core. That's going to be absolutely critical. Another thing is down to the basics, foot patrols from our police department, doubling down on cleaning up downtown. Our downtown association does a great job, but I think we should expand the footprint to make sure all of downtown feels safe and clean. And frankly, if we want to attract investment, we need to stop always looking to investors and companies as the cash cow that we can just keep raising taxes on. We need to have a business-friendly environment to get those workers there, get those buildings in the ground, and then generate that tax revenue over time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. I think that to revitalize downtown, we absolutely have to have a focus on streamlining our planning process. I probably sound like a broken record because I've mentioned this on multiple questions already, but we absolutely have to make it easier to build downtown. We have a lot of building that is in the pipeline, a lot of commercial property that's in the pipeline, and we absolutely need to incentivize that, or at least not try to cut it off at the knees. It's very important for us to do that. And then I absolutely agree. We need to ensure that we have clean streets downtown. And again, I would say we can't have camping on our sidewalks. We can't have trash and drug deals all over the place that we have right now. Foot patrol will help with that, certainly, and more cleaning will help with that. I think we also need to support big, hairy, audacious goals like the Urban Confluence Project, which has the capacity to really put our city on the map and help people to come downtown and be excited about being here.
Thank you. Councilmember Perales.
Yeah, thank you. The top complaints that I hear in and around downtown, whether it's you're an investor, you're already owning or running a business, or you're a resident or a visitor, have to do with the challenges of homelessness and public safety. We have to be able to address those. We've talked about them already as priorities. I've been advocating for a permanent foot patrol within our downtown so that we can be able to make it and continue to make it safer. We also, though, know that what really brings people into downtown are the arts and special events. We need to continue to support and subsidize those organizations and get people into our downtown. That's when our downtown is most vibrant, whether it's a Sharks game with sports or whether it's events at Cesar Chavez Park or other major events in the downtown, and we need to continue to incentivize them. But the biggest and single most important thing that we need to help revitalize downtown is people. So we need to continue to invest in building more housing, get more people. If we have more people in downtown, it's going to help drive everything else.
Thank you. Supervisor Chavez.
Yeah, thank you. You know, one of the things that I'll say is that I think the struggle for downtown to continue to become is something that all of us who love San Jose, who've been part of San Jose, have been trying to support it moving in that direction. And what I'm really excited about is that I think the council's done a lot of really good work. I think we see a lot of office buildings that are coming out of the ground and a lot of housing that's coming out of the ground. And we have to keep supporting that because there's no way that downtown livens up without more people. And we absolutely need to understand that the one reason that downtown survived for years without much support from anyone was really rooted in the arts. These little arts groups and big arts groups and just really sticking it out there, and we need to continue to support and fund their efforts. And then the last thing is I absolutely agree that downtown needs to be clean and safe and feel like you want to take your family there and you can take your families there.
Thank you. And Mr. Spence.
We've been talking a lot about VTA, and one of the things that VTA doesn't do, it doesn't run trains or buses towards the end of the night, so people can actually use the downtown area to come and go, so for their entertainment or anything else. We've eliminated a lot of the parking downtown, so people can't even drive down there to do whatever. You've got the Sharks who are even concerned about the fact the last time that they made a statement about the fact that this Google village that they're building is going to take away parking from what they need to do to have the Sharks be a viable team for them. And they were been one of the biggest supporters of downtown as we go. Bringing BART downtown, we're talking about tearing up the downtown again for construction. And that has been nothing but bad things that have happened. So I really am concerned about the fact that we don't have a transit system that supports people going downtown. And I agree with everyone else. It needs to be clean and safe because people don't feel safe in the downtown.
Thank you.
Eli,
So-
just one quick rebuttal on that.
Sure.
I think it's important because we worked very hard actually to ensure that we didn't tear up the downtown with BART construction, bringing forward the innovative single bore tunneling technology that allows us to escape the traditional cut and cover that would have had a gaping hole. And I agree, would have really been tremendously detrimental to downtown. I worked personally very hard on that with our San Jose Downtown Association. And I'm proud that that's the path that we're moving forward. So we're not seeing that. And we have a lot of buy-in from our businesses and property owners in downtown because now they know that they're not going to have that impact.
Eli,
Thank
if
you.
I can follow up, one of the things that's going to happen once they start boring underneath the ground, that infrastructure that's down there on Santa Clara Street and all the other streets is extremely old. And we're going to have more problems that come up just by doing any kind of damage down there to the roadways or even under the ground. We're going to be spending so much time with having to go back and repair the basic infrastructure of the downtown that this project is going to be nothing but headaches.
Okay.
I give one more, Eli. We're actually so deep underground. We are going to avoid that infrastructure. We're more likely to run into mammoth remains, right, than we are to hit some sewer pipes or utilities. So we are, all of that has been taken into account. And I think it would be important for community members or those that are following to look into that because we absolutely have ensured the least impact to downtown with this method.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll be moving on to another question. We have more questions than time, unfortunately. So we're going to start doing 30-second answers so we can make sure each of you is able to address these important topics. So the next question is, do you believe the mayor of San Jose should have the authority to hire and fire department heads, including the police chief? And we will start with Councilmember Perales.
Yes, I am personally in favor of the strong mayor form of government for the city of San Jose. But we've heard loud and clear from our community members. We hosted the right way to do it, which is to be able to have a charter revision commission. And they have overwhelmingly said they would not like to see that here in the city of San Jose. So I will support that interest of theirs and not vote in favor of that.
Thank you. Mr. Spence.
This city is built on the city manager model. I think that because of the turnover of our mayors that it's better to leave it as it is with the city manager being the point person for hiring and firing. However, the city manager is beholden to the council. And so if the city manager can't manage his people, then that's the way the council and the mayor can go to replace him and to replace those people that are not doing their job.
Thanks. Councilmember Mahan.
Yes, I think responsibility is too diffuse in our system. Most large cities have a stronger mayor model in which the mayor can hire and fire department heads. I think when you have somebody who is elected citywide on an agenda, he or she ought to have the ability to, within reason at least, get the bureaucracy aligned around executing that vision with, of course, council approval. And so I do think that accountability ought to be closer to the people, which is with the electeds. And I think our next mayor needs to make that case to the public and help people understand why it's important.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis.
No, I think that our current form of government works pretty well, and the people have spoken in the Charter Review Commission that they don't want a change. I also think that it's important to note that the city manager can also be recalled, not just by the city council, but also by a vote of the people. That's something that could happen right now. We currently have a great city manager. She has been on the job for almost a year, and I think she's doing a great job. But I do think that it's important to note that we have a good, strong council manager form of government now.
Thank you. And Supervisor Chavez.
I think that that one of the good things about the current system is it requires the mayor and the council to work together to focus on the performance of the city manager. And what that means is that you need to get a majority or a supermajority aligned for any action that you want to take. And that's important because you need the council to work together and not to have splinters over who likes who or who doesn't like whom. And so I actually think the system that's here now works fine.
Thank you. Moving on, the mayor spearheaded.
Are we still doing rebuttals or are we out of time, Eli?
I'll allow one rebuttal here, but then we got to move on.
I'll just say, I don't think the system's working well. And I think part of the diagnosis for the problem is that we have too many decision makers who are unable to actually set too many different priorities. And we've sort of split executive responsibilities between the mayor and the city manager. And so there's no clear accountability for some of those key executive functions. And we have departments that are misaligned and we're giving far too much direction from the council. It's a form of government that's typically the form you see in small cities where the professional staff truly run absolutely everything. And the council meets once a month. I think with our professional staff, anyway, I think having greater focus and accountability is just critical to getting our city on a better track. And I think you see the results today. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The mayor spearheaded gun safety measures, including recording purchases and requiring liability insurance for gun owners. Do you agree with these policies and what would you do differently? And let's start with Supervisor Chavez.
So, I appreciate what the mayor was trying to do here, but one of the things that I think we have to really focus on is using the laws that we have now to make sure that people who have access to firearms that shouldn't, that we're removing those firearms. And that's very difficult to do because we don't have enough officers in Raoul, and Jim can tell you that's a dangerous work. But we have the ability right now to remove guns from people who shouldn't have them. And we're not doing that countywide nearly at the rate we need to.
Thank you. Councilmember Perales.
Yeah, thank you. I did agree, and I do agree on one condition, and I put this condition within the motion that we ultimately accepted, was that we have to ensure that whatever new rules, regulations we're putting in place when it comes to gun restrictions, that it actually is producing results, that it is actually making our community safer, and that we're not just spinning our wheels. And in this case, we knew that we were going to be challenged in court. That's what's happening. I think we need to have a definitive answer on whatever it is that we're doing, that it produces results. And I'm looking forward to the opportunities the council is going to have soon to have that discussion.
Thank you. Mr. Spence.
I think that both of the items brought forward are ridiculous. And the reason I say that is because there doesn't appear to be any safety net for how that data, once it's collected, whether it's a videotape or whether it's a insurance policy that the city wants to put together. Anyone within the city offices can decide that they want to be somebody who wants to tell everybody who has a gun or whatever else. I think it's very, very unsafe. I think that even if you broke into a gun dealer's business, you could take that videotape and you at a crook could do a lot of damage to the people who are there trying to do the right thing.
Thank you. Councilmember Mahan.
Thanks for the question. I voted against the fee because I think there are a lot of problems with oversight, implementation, and potentially constitutionality. I do think the basic premise that if you're going to keep guns in your home, you ought to have general liability for cases of accidents which happen and do cost taxpayers money when there's an accident in the home. And so creating those incentives, I think, is a really reasonable policy, which I was able to support. But the flat out fee was just not something that I was comfortable with.
Thank you. And Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. I was the only council member to vote against both of the new gun owner mandates, the insurance and the fee. Years ago, I did vote for the safe storage. I think that as a firearm owner myself, that's a very reasonable thing that we were frankly already doing, and most responsible gun owners I know we're already doing. What we need to do is we need more traffic enforcement that actually stops guns from coming into the city, as well as drugs. We need to make our red flag laws more, we need to use them more, but we also need to make them more accessible to the public, and we need to get ghost guns off the streets.
Thank you. We'll move on to our last question now, which is, now that we're slowly getting back to life as the pandemic recedes, at least a little bit, and more businesses and attractions are reopening, how would you as mayor recover increased tourism in San Jose? And we'll start with you, Mr. Spence.
Well, the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to do a good publicity campaign to tell people that the downtown is open. And as of right now, there are still restrictions that show that our downtown really isn't open. So we need to do that. We also need to have a clean city so people want to come downtown. The latest police survey shows out of their annual report that 40% of the people don't even feel safe downtown, and a lot more, a bigger percentage don't feel safe downtown at night. So we need to change that whole slide. So we show that we are a good city and we've got things that people can do. And to have people.
I think that's it. I'm sorry.
All right. Thank you.
Supervisor Chavez.
I'm sorry, Eli, could you say the question again? I apologize.
Yeah, of course. It's, how would you as mayor increase tourism in San Jose?
You know, I think part of it is that back to what I said earlier, we have to invest in the arts, and we have to appreciate the Sharks and the San Jose Giants and Happy Hollow and all these great attractions we have, and really lift them up and make sure that they have more resources than they do today, and that we do kind of shine a light on it. And the other thing I think we can do is do more special events, really using downtown and closing down the streets and gathering people.
Thank you. Councilmember Perales.
Yeah, thank you. We have to, number one, recognize we're not going to be on anybody's top 10 list for the first place they're going to go for vacation. So we have to recognize that when we're thinking about tourism or destination marketing. And then we have to market and market our strengths. For instance, we just had the Mexica New Year event, which was the largest Native American New Year event in the entire country. We have so many terrific things to market about our city, and it all stems around our arts and our local entertainment here. We need to do a better job at marketing that, so then that way we can actually be on people's radar.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. I've worked with the San Jose Sports Authority over the last 5 years as a liaison to the council in bringing first the college football playoffs here a couple of years ago. And then Councilmember Perales and I worked to bring back the Sonic Runway, which you see in the background of Jim's Zoom background there. And all of those things were really to bring more people to downtown. That's also why I asked in last year's budget for us to be able to do a fireworks display again this year. We absolutely need to invest in arts and events, but we do also need a safe and clean downtown.
Thank you, Councilmember. And Councilmember Mahan.
Well, at the risk of sounding repetitive, I will say that I think the basics of safety, I talked about foot patrols earlier. I talked about cleaning up our public spaces. Obviously, our solutions to homelessness, which we just scratched the surface of earlier, are critical to making people want to come out and visit San Jose and enjoy our public spaces, and certainly invest in arts and culture and events. And I think I'd be uniquely well positioned to partner with our private sector to bring more of those events and investments to places like downtown, which can be a destination for people in the Bay Area. Thank you.
Thank you. So that is all of our questions. I'm being told that we are very much out of time. So I think that for closing remarks, can we just get 15 seconds for each candidate? And we will go in reverse order. So we'll start with Mr. Spence.
I want to give back to our city the investment of time and knowledge is bestowed on me. My vision is stand for integrity, harmony, and safety. the integrity to do the right thing at the right time. I'll work to build harmony in diverse neighborhoods and maintain a level of safety necessary for our community to grow and prosper. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Mahan.
Thanks. Yeah, I think as you heard tonight, we all know what the key issues are and have a lot of the same solutions. I think what we need to fix at City Hall is what I'd call the operating system, which is forcing focus, setting measurable goals around our budget, doing fewer things, tracking performance metrics month over month, and holding ourselves accountable for delivering results with our scarce resources. And that's what I think really needs to change. Thank you.
Councilmember Davis.
As I said earlier, we must be a safe, clean, and thriving San Jose. We can do that by focusing on rebuilding our public safety, protecting our single-family homes, and tackling our growing homelessness and trash problems. I thank you for listening this evening. Please vote Dev Davis and go to devdavis.com to learn more.
Thank you. Councilmember Perales.
Yeah, thank you. I want to make sure that San Jose is a city for all of us, where we can all find an affordable place to live, find dignified work, and be able to be in a safe community no matter where we live in the city. If you'd like to find out more about my campaign, please visit raulperales.com. We'd love to engage with you, and thank you all again for being here.
Thank you. And Supervisor Chavez.
Thank you. I want to thank Spotlight very much for hosting us this evening. And I want to thank all of the people who joined us and took an hour or so out of your lives to learn a little bit more about all of our visions and dreams. But I think we're all here for all of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, that concludes our 2022 Mayoral Candidate Forum. I want to thank all of tonight's participants for joining us. Tonight's forum was recorded, and San Jose Spotlight will be publishing a recap story and video soon. Before we go, a couple words from our executive director, Josh Bruce.
Thank you, Eli, and thank you again to all of our participants tonight. Josh Bruce here, Executive Director of San Jose Spotlight, and we're San Jose's only nonprofit news organization. So Ramon and I are very thankful for all of the support that you readers have given us over our last 3 years. And if you're not a donor, we'd love for you to become a sustaining member with the annual or monthly donation. Again, we are a nonprofit news organization. We are fueled by your support. So please go to sanjosespotlight.com to become a member or sign up for a one-time donation. And of course, sign up for our newsletter if you're not already. But thank you all for tuning in tonight, and good luck to all our candidates on June 7th. Have a good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Good night.
Right.
Night.